starting as an engineer and then transitioning to a product manager and then now leading product for Hotstar.
With the penetration of internet, the user segment has changed completely. We were always building for the top 5% of the population, but now we have to look at the bottom strata. Reducing premium subscription price in India is actually going to lead to more revenue. And we figured out no, it sort of improved the trials, but the net revenue remained flat, even though you reduce prices by say 50%.
Amazon had this button which was called obviously as a shopping cart, and a lot of people were not even clicking and adding to the app. The entire team spent maybe a month on researching, and then they ideally realized that maybe for some of the languages they will have to replace that cart with a bag kind of an item, because that is how people have shopped.
And nobody would have thought a cricket field can be seen in a vertical experience. Now people actually love sort of watching in that experience. Sometimes the simplest solutions work much better than the complicated sort of solutions, and keeping it simple often helps in how we are able to shape the product.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Product and People, a podcast by Enzo Lab. This is where we explore how digital products are really built through different decisions, team building, through trade-offs, and a whole lot of human instinct. If this is your first time tuning in, we started this show because we felt that the craft of product design needed more honest stories. Not just what was shipped, but how it all came together. Who had wrestled with what complexity, who had to decide what, and what was the messy trade-offs that were going behind. I am Rati, the growth lead of Enzo Labs. And as always, I have Amar Srivastava with me, who will be leading this conversation. Amar, hi. So Amar has worked across startups, nonprofits, and public system, from founding India's one of the largest youth-led road safety campaign to now building scalable tech at Scalar. He is currently SVP Business and Product at Scalar, and he brings a rare mix of systems thinking and behavior first product insight. And that is what makes him the perfect host for this particular episode. Amma, before we dive in, do you want to share anything that you're most excited about this episode and the guest we have today, who is Saurabh Agarwal, and his great experience that is there?
Definitely. First of all, thank you, Rati, for the invite. And I think it's always a pleasure to be on the episodes and sort of discuss stories of how and who have shaped the Indian product ecosystem, and then what we can learn from them to sort of create the right playbooks for current PMs and then the future product managers, designers, and the entire founders ecosystem out there. So yeah, I think I'm very excited by today's guest, Saurabh Agarwal, and I think on an overall level, when we saw their journey, I think starting as an engineer and then transitioning to a product manager and then now leading product for Hotstar, I think the journey has been phenomenal, and I'm very very sure that there are so many large number of anecdotes that we'll get a chance to learn about the difficult decisions and complex choices that they have made. And obviously, I think something that I felt was most exciting is the sectors that they have worked in, and they have seen the transition of the Indian internet ecosystem with access to Geo, and then how to build products not only in health tech but now at scale with Hotstar, right? So I think I am very, very excited on what we learn in the journey today while discussing with Saurabh. But yeah, super excited to be on this episode. And thank you to
Yes.
Product and People for putting this together.
Absolutely, I agree with Amar. So here today's guest, Saurabh sir. Especially, I wanted to add is that viewers, whoever is watching, I think products Saurabh sir's work has touched your life in ways that you are not even realizing right now. He has worked with not only just Disney Plus, also as Amar said, he has worked with LinkedIn, Google, and many more like Practo. So his experience is across health, search, social networks, and one of the India's biggest streaming platform right now at Hotstar. So from that angle, I think all of us, a community of designers and PMs, are super excited for this particular episode because we have so many queries, questions, some excitement that we have, expecting from this episode. And I think Amar will voice it all out from our end, and we are super excited. So I'm passing on the mic to Amar. Saurabh, so welcome to the episode. Thank you.
Thank you, Rati. Thank you, Amar, for having me. Pleasure is all mine. I hope the conversation is interesting, and folks who are listening and watching and like it.
We are sure. Given your experience, I think a lot to uncover. I think just getting started, sir. If you would like to share, I think something that really intrigues me is that in today's world, when product managers, product designers, engineers are collaborating, I think there is always a tussle that goes on between the engineers and the product managers, right? That what we should build, what we should not, and then on an overall level, how do we make sure that that the right products get shipped in the right timelines, right? And then what user behavior to prioritize. But before we get started and detail out anything else, just wanted to take a step back and look at your journey of multiple decades, if I'm not wrong, where you started as an engineer and then transitioned into product, and now obviously you are a senior product leader. So what was the differences, sir, that you felt have happened in your career as you moved across each of the role? What is something that you believe remained constant from a user or let's say decision making process, and what are the things that have been evolving constantly, and how do you think that um does the tussle between an engineer and a PM, being at both sides, how have you figured it out and what have your learnings been?
Yeah, sure. I think it's been an interesting journey from an engineer to a product manager, and now a product leader. I would actually say what has remained constant is the customer empathy and user first thinking. While building at Google and then moving into product management at Practo, LinkedIn, and Hotstar, the one thing that has remained constant is thinking about the user, thinking about what problems we are trying to solve for them, and solving for those problems. The roles have evolved. For me, also, my thought process has evolved. While as an engineer, I'm fixated on solving one problem the best way and
Awesome.
often fixated on the solutions. As I moved into product management, things changed to the factor that, hey, I started looking at more, hey, slightly bigger picture than sort of just the solution and fixated on a particular solution. I started looking at, hey, how the overall ecosystem is behaving, how the overall product is making a difference in the user's life, and why certain things might be important and why
Awesome.
certain things are not important. Say, for example, I'll give this example. It was a pretty interesting and humbling learning. I used to work in custom search engine, which was also being provided to AdSense customers for Google. As an engineer, we would not prioritize AdSense customers to do a lot of changes in a custom search engine. We were like, hey, people can come to see custom search engines and then do it. But as soon as I started wearing my product hat, I was like, hey, by the way, these are the users who are paying us more. They should get more functionality, not less functionality. And that's where things started changing. Where as an engineer, you're always thinking of, hey, what do I invest in and what do I not invest in? As well as how I actually look for the solutions and easiest way out. While as a product manager, I started looking into, hey, what is the right experience for the user? What is the, and also leaving technology aside to certain extent, but more focusing on what's the right experience for the user or customer, as well as what we should be building, where we can potentially expand technology envelope. And as I have grown into product management, I also realize that there are times where you'll have to literally expand the technology envelope, and there are times where you'll actually have to say, it's okay, whatever is feasible, we'll do that. And it depends on how much impact the changes are being driving to our users sort of life, and that's where you expand or you hold back. So those are the learnings that has evolved in my mind, from just building stuff to thinking about long term to also now thinking strategically in terms of where to expand, where not to expand that.
Awesome, awesome. I think your journey, I think how you briefly touched upon being at as an engineer at Google, and now obviously, I think more than a decade of experience, particularly in product roles. Just wanted to understand that how do you think product management as an art has also evolved in the last decade? Do you think that with access to internet, obviously at scale in India, credits to Geo, there have been a behavior shift or there have been a necessity for PMs to sort of dabble with different kind of audiences now, and there are challenges which I think we have never solved for, and then it's a new battleground and we are learning on the go.
Yeah, definitely. With the penetration of internet, the I would say the user segment has changed completely.
Sure.
While I always say that there are two Indias, we were always building for the top 5% of the population. But now we have to look at the bottom strata, the tier two, tier three users. And that's where the entire thought process needs to change. And it's changing. We need to
Understood.
simplify the products a lot more. We need to think about, hey, how we are going to get the next generation of people online. And
Understood.
that becomes a lot more important. Uh, in order to how we can potentially simplify products, how we can localize products to cater to these users.
Understood. Any particular example, sort of where I think which was eye opening for you, where you felt that maybe whatever you did in the pre geo world as a process, or maybe learnings from the West in terms of how product management works, and then when you sort of actually saw the new kind of tier two or type two India coming and using your products. Any concrete example that you would share, which was eye opening?
So I'll give a very interesting example, and this is back from the LinkedIn days.
Sure.
Uh, Basically, if you see on LinkedIn's main app, when you go to My Network, the connection suggestions are in a grid.
Yeah.
It's a two
Okay.
cross n grid where people can scroll to the connection suggestions, and we were building LinkedIn's mobile web out of India. And we're like, hey, and that feature has worked brilliantly in the world in India also on the main mobile app. And then we're like, hey, it's a easy enough feature. We should, and we used to have just a ranked list, a plain ranked list of connection suggestions on the
Understood.
mobile. We were like, hey, let's go ahead and build it. When we built it, the metrics tanked.
Oh, okay.
We were all deep red, and we're like, hey, what's happening? Why are we deep red? And then when we actually dug in deeper, we realized that hey, users who were looking at it, and since these were infrequent users, especially in India, who were not so habituated to LinkedIn, they were actually not reacting to the grid. They were confused, hey, which is my top suggestion, because there was inherent ranking was lost.
Oh, okay.
And that's where we realized that hey, this is not for an infrequent user who is not visiting LinkedIn frequently. And we had to literally roll back something which has already worked in the Western markets and even for India, for highly engaged users. Similarly, I think what we were also doing at Hotstar was we were trying to sort of come up with fancy train names, something like, hey, we used to have very simple train names like, hey, crime dramas, or and then we started coming up with very fancy names, hard hitting thrillers and things like those. And again, we realized that our metrics were tanking primarily because the tier 2, tier 3 users who are coming onto the platform are not habituated to those kind of sentences, phrases, and simpler is better for them.
Understood. Understood. No, no. I think I still remember one of the case studies when I had started building for Bharat, as we say, where I think we realized that Amazon, when they came to India, I think they had this button which was called obviously as a shopping cart, and a lot of people were not even clicking and adding to the app or anything because they had never been to a mall in their entire life. And when the concept of a shopping cart was not very clear to them. I think the entire team spent maybe a month on researching, and then they ideally realized that maybe for some of the languages, they will have to replace that cart with a bag kind of an item because that is how people have shopped their entire life. So I think those are very interesting insights, and I'm sure that as we progress more into the podcast, I think you will share, and we would love to learn on more examples around that. But before we go into that, I think there is one interesting aspect about your journey, sir, where I think you started as an engineer, then went to a PM, and then as a PM leader. So a lot of our community member, what Rati tells me, have been, let's say, PMs in the age group or designers in the let's say age group of 3 to 5 years in their profession as an expert, right? And then they feel that there is a plateau. So uh, what is one realization that you have had when you move from, let's say, a hands-on PM to a leader? What are the changes that you had to make? What helped you get from, let's say, an ICPM to take on more leadership charter, and how has your thought process evolved? And any when you look back, any key thing that worked for you to sort of grow up the ladder so soon?
So I don't know whether I would call it as worked or not, but I think what I can potentially tell more is, hey, how my sort of mindset kept on changing during these times. When you are a PM and or a designer, individual contributor, you are looking at your product area. You're just married to your product area and trying to solve for that. Oftentimes, what happens is, and what distinguishes great PMs from good PMs is that they're not looking at only their own product area. They're looking at the ecosystem or the overall organization as a whole,
Yeah.
and they have empathy towards other parts of the organization when they are building their stuff, and that's what distinguishes a rockstar PM from a good PM in my mind. When they are able to look at ki, hey, what changes they are making, how it will impact other parts of the organization overall. Those are the things which we look at for the budding PM leaders, in order to say ki, hey, and in order to groom them also uh, on to the leadership chart levels.
Understood. Understood. And I think as an ICPM, what I have realized is that generally we are only in some way we have our manager, and then we have obviously the users and data to look up to. As you move up to the leadership rank, I think you understand the entire business model. You have,
Yeah.
let's say, the founders, and then or the CEO, and then multiple other stakeholders you become aware about, and then you have to make sure that the product decisions basically do not counter what they would be trying to move for the overall business as well. So any particular insight where, let's say, product was suggesting something else, just from the user interaction point of view or data point of view, and then the business was suggesting something else, and how did you make sense of what decision to go ahead with, and how do you generally navigate those complex avenues, right? Because I have faced that multiple times, so I'm sure you would have also.
Yeah, and that's where I was saying, right? You'll have to look at how the organization as a whole gets impacted in order to do some of these things. Say, for example, we were sort of developing this PIP mode at Hotstar,
Okay.
and so when you actually minimize the app, the content can still keep on playing. So product was like, yes, this is the best thing forward. We can probably go ahead without ads on this. A lot less users will actually play this. But then the business was saying, hey, we'll lose ad revenue. People will just sort of use it as a hack to bypass ads.
Yeah.
And so this was two conflicting things. We wanted one way we wanted people to sort of immerse into it. The other way was business was saying, hey, it could potentially lead to core revenue loss. And that's where we said, hey, no, we'll build ads in the PIP mode also, so that yes, if a user is watching in the PIP mode, they are watching, and hence ads will be there, because that's the product offering today, instead of just going from one extreme to the other, which will also help us stop some of these bypassing of ads and things like those. So that helped us ship the product in the right way, while discussing with business, the ads team, as well as the experiences team, in terms of, hey, what is the right balance.
Sure.
And there are multiple such examples, whether it's the billboard ads that we have on the platform. Yes, it is some amount of friction, but then ultimately we'll have to look at, hey, what is the business value that we are trying to drive,
Yes.
uh, and then sort of solving for it. Another interesting example, which was sort of in a reverse direction, was we started sort of saying that, hey, we are going to actually promote a lot more free content to free users so that they start engaging onto the platform, while paid content will remain for paid users, as well as for free users who can subscribe, potentially who show high affinity to subscribe. Will showcase them more paid content
That's
so
true.
that they are able to subscribe. And however, the business team had concerns that, hey, this will lead to loss in subscriptions revenue, we should not do it. We were like, hey, let's try it out. This is the right thing. The overall hypothesis was that, hey, once users start engaging onto the platform, they'll subscribe more. And in fact, like when we started experimenting, we saw both free user engagement increasing as well as subscriptions increasing.
Awesome. No, definitely, definitely. I think in hindsight, it always seems that we took the right decision, because obviously it makes sense, right? That if you engage more and then you become habituated, I think your affinity to the platform will increase. But there is always this tussle that what free content to unlock, what not to unlock, and I think bunch of learnings there we'd love to come back to. But I think one thing interesting that I have realized from your journey, Saurabh, is that you started at Google and then bunch of Indian startups and then LinkedIn and then eventually JioHotstar now. Um for the community, I think one thing that I was amazed at, that you have made these transitions from, let's say, a global $1 trillion firm to, let's say, an Indian startup ecosystem and then back there. Just wanted to understand that how does the product management process, do you think there works, and what are the differences if there are any, and then um, how are these global giants actually getting accustomed to, let's say, the Indian product building mindset for the Indian or the Bharat users? Are they getting accustomed? What are the challenges, and how are things pairing up there?
Correct. I feel, see, the art and the craft remains same. And by definition, I think what the Indian product management ecosystem brings in also is that we are a lot more scrappy, we are a lot more iterative, so we can move things a lot faster once the problem area is identified. And that has helped these organizations to also take big bets into the Indian ecosystem. Say, for example, LinkedIn Lite was a bet from India, started as a India only product. Now it's the default mobile web experience for LinkedIn
Oh, awesome.
across the world. So yeah, so that's how these things start. And what helped was that, hey, we were very very clear on the goal for the product, that hey, we want to launch every page which a user is navigating in less than 5 seconds at P90 in India. And that's why we actually optimized on speed while we were building Light, and
Yes.
that helped us prove that hey, faster is better everywhere, not
Yes.
only in India, and hence this should be the default mobile web experience for India. So I
Yes.
think the core remains same, and the core philosophy I still feel is PM sort of follow is launch, fail fast,
Sure.
which in Indian ecosystem is a lot more prevalent at this particular stage, and hence the larger organizations also have started take a note of the talent out there, and are setting up their shops here to hire more and more talent and sort of move their product processes also forward across the Indian ecosystem. If I have to see, hey, when I had sort of joined, or when I had sort of jumped into product management, the field was not even defined. People were always confused between a project manager versus a product manager and a program manager.
Yeah.
I think now the role has its own definition across, it's a known definition across the Indian ecosystem, which is good to see. And it has evolved overall to be the right kind of a role for product managers in the
Sure.
ecosystem right now.
That is very helpful. I think one of the things that, since you were mentioning about Geo Hotstar, right, and the kind of uh, choices that we had to make in terms of PIP mode, whether to show ads or not, whether to go ahead or not. I think today Google also, I saw that maybe few months back, was dabbling with that, whether the AI answer engine would be the right kind of methodology, or they continue with the traditional 10 blue click kind of a model. I've seen that maybe in India they have quickly ramped up to an AI mode where you can sort of follow the user behavior that was getting built through ChatGPT or Perplexity. So, in your mindset, sort of, how do you think, let's say, these caveats are sort of, let's say, brainstormed, and how are these different at a Google versus a Geo Hotstar, or they are largely same? Because the risk taking ability for a global giant might be slightly higher, because they maybe are always up, that there are too many markets for them to sort of experiment and learn from. So how does this function, and any recommendations on how your learnings has been about the changing user behavior in the AI world?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I feel, in my experience, the risk taking ability for global organization is lesser than the Indian organization, because there's a lot more reputation at stake,
Okay.
sometimes bigger revenue chunks at stake. Uh, However, I think the conversations for some of these risks in both these organizations are sort of made at a data level.
Yes.
Yes, we will experiment with a 5%, 10% audience cohort, and it's not like Google rolled out to AI mode to everyone. They were experimenting in the US, they were experimenting in India. So they do that, and then they decide whether they want to roll it out something in a particular geography or not, or even worldwide or not. AI to me is a fundamental battleground for Google right now. It is actually sort of questioning their dominance in search and advertising space. So they will have to take aggressive bets, and I'm actually happy that Google is taking those aggressive
Yeah.
bets to solve for it. Otherwise, they are very, very ripe to get disrupted. Um, in terms of, I think, changing user preferences, yes, we will have to change on how the products behave, how the products work, because people are getting habituated to AI. I feel that with the AI revolution, what has changed is we will see a lot more users come online. We'll see a lot more users interact with these properties. So what all the organizations will need to do is be ready for this set of users. And these are the way Web 2 sort of brought in tier 2 users. This would be the tier 3, tier 4 time where everyone will be using AI and the online technologies without even knowing. So that is the paradigm shift I feel we may go into, which will make people more productive and get more and more users online, because the interfaces will become simpler. You don't have to navigate a particular app. You can actually talk to an app and things like those. And that's what the organizations will need to be ready when the time comes, or the time is actually here.
Yeah, I think it's already up here, and it's looking at our faces and screaming that you have to sort of make those tweaks. I think you made a very, very interesting point, sort of where you mentioned that users, particularly the maybe the type 2 India, where let's say I think they were not very habituated with a lot of complex product interactions. I think more and more of them will now find it easier to navigate through products, just because the kind of complex interactions will no longer be needed with AI out there, right? I think ChatGPT yesterday released the agent mode for everyone at scale. I think you just talk to it and it will do everything, and you just have to give permissions. I think the kind of complexities that users had to go through for doing simple things is reducing massively, and then obviously there would be new ways that would get in unlocked. In your experience, how are you sort of prepping up for it? What are the kind of let's say user behaviors that you are trying to understand will evolve when AI comes in, and any recommendations for everyone tuning in that this is what they should immediately start doing, and how they should structure their next few months to make sure they're uh, in a way, I think that everyone is already late if they have not started, but how do they sort of quickly catch up to it?
Yeah, I feel two things. As we understand, as the AI wave grows on us, we will need to build for interfaces, design for interfaces where we simplify things and welcome these AI first users, I would say,
Sure.
because their behavior will completely change. They will be completely different users
Yeah.
because their portals or their path to internet is changing, and it's changing drastically. And for people in product and design, I would say, hey, to me, AI is something as simple as a web browser back in 90s. So
Understood.
if you don't know it, you will get disrupted. This is the way people will actually use it. So we should start looking into the fundamentals of AI, how people are what is happening in this particular industry, how it is making life simple for users, and
Yeah.
how potentially we could use this in our own use cases, per se, to make to make the experiences much better and much simpler. To me, what is happening with this revolution is it's simplifying the access
Understood.
to a lot more users, and that is what we need to understand, that hey, what this simplification of access brings in to our businesses, to our products.
Understood. Understood. No, no, that is very helpful. Just one point that any example that you would want to share, sort of in terms of, let's say, in your current role, you have felt that maybe something was not possible, maybe just a year back, but now it seems possible, and you have started to brainstorm on that. How can AI unlock that value for users at scale, given the scale that JioHotstar, let's say, operates at?
Yeah, I'll give a couple of examples.
Sure.
CTV navigation, we know, is very, very bad. Like,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
clunky.
Yeah.
The remotes, you'll have to use remotes multiple clicks to do something. And with this IPL, we started experimenting with the voice based search for key moments on the match. And
Awesome. Yeah.
it was pretty interesting with users has started adopting it. It's very still early in its life stage, but users started adopting it. Users started playing with it, and it simplified the key moment access for the users, where they would say, "Hey, show me the last six, or show me Virat Kohli's 50,"
Yeah.
and we will actually show them exactly the same thing,
Awesome.
which is pretty delightful for the users. Another thing, which at least with the launch of VO3 seems pretty interesting, is hey, how potentially AI can help in content creation. To what level is debatable, but that is something which we have started brainstorming, exploring, that what could, where are the boundaries rather than what is the starting point. We know that there is a starting
I
point.
think that's a very interesting food for thought. I think we saw some of that early version in Black Mirror. I'm not sure if you have watched that.
Yeah.
I think I recently someone mentioned, and I got a chance to sort of watch that, and I realized that the kind of I think they mentioned about a quantum computer generating infinite sort of scenarios in a particular show just bases the user preference. I think now, given AI can unlock the value and content creation at scale, I think it will also become much more, in a way, difficult to understand what would, let's say, what content to actually go ahead and create, because there can be platforms creating personalized stories at scale that are fine tuned to what you like, where you drop off. And I think that can also become very, very interesting.
Yeah, that is true. And also, what is pretty interesting for me is that this is going to unlock a whole new productivity levels
Understood.
through us. What is not possible, what was not possible, say, a year ago, is now very much possible in terms of we being able to cut the manual task and give it to AI
Yeah.
and do actually a lot more work. To me, it's equivalent to industrialization, where we will be able to be more productive. The technologies will evolve, and hence we'll be able to sort of ship more.
What particularly you as a product builder has seen, let's say, AI has unlocked as capabilities? AI has always been there, I think, as a recommendation, etc., engine, etc., but what are the new capabilities that have been unlocked now in the last 1 2 years, and what should be the roadmap a product manager designer in the industry today should look up to, so that they are able to make sure that they are not caught napping and they use it as soon as possible?
Yeah, so I think we have been using AI from long, and we have been sort of shipping great experiences, and for both efficiencies and delivering novel experiences. For example, if you see during the cricket tournaments, we provide a MaxView experience, which is a vertical cricket viewing experience.
Yeah.
Entire clip is sort of generated, or the entire video is generated from AI today. We don't invest a lot in extra cameras and all to generate that stream. While when we started, we were just using a lot of camera setups to generate that stream. Another example is we do a lot of quality optimization, dehazing the streams specifically from India during the winters so that we can provide a clear sort of video stream to our users. And all of that has been done with AI. As we generate a bunch of posters to showcase the relevant posters, relevant content to the users. And as the advances have become, we are also exploring today in terms of how the new advances we can potentially utilize for in JioHotstar's use case, in order to become more efficient and like develop things at scale. Uh, in terms of the product managers, engineers, and designers sort of listening to this conversation, I would say the way at least I look at AI is that this is a productivity tool, and that is going to unlock immense productivity at our ends in order to iterate on things faster, iterate on ideas faster. And this is sort of an industrial revolution where you'll be able to do the same thing 10 times faster or even 20 times faster. And that is something which we need to sort of keep in mind, uh, in terms of, yes, competition is going to be able to innovate fast. We need to innovate fast with the current unlock of technology. As giving this example to someone else also, we had gone on a trip a couple of months ago, and after every trip, what we used to do was go through our credit card statements and sort of figure out, hey, what were the common expenses, what are the personal expenses, and how much is the total expense overall. And this time, what I did was I threw it to LLM. It just classified everything all together in 2 minutes, and I was done. So that is the kind of productivity in our day-to-day tasks AI is going to unlock, and we should be aware and we should be sort of leveraging it rather than running away from it, because that's going to unlock new innovations in our product building processes and even in our products that we are selling.
Understood. I think, see, I think there's this statement, right, that is going around that maybe a person using AI will replace you and not AI itself. But we'll come to that in the later part of the conversation, sort of where some of our community members also had this question that how is the profession of product management gonna evolve with AI, and then what are your tips to it? So I think we'll come back to it. But before we jump to the next section, I think couple of more things about your background that I just wanted to deep dive on. I think you worked at LinkedIn as well. LinkedIn obviously started sort of gaining a lot of traction in India, and then now in I think most of our professionals' life, it is one of the most used social network in a way. I think I maybe consume more of LinkedIn than something else in my life right now. So just wanted to understand that your stint at LinkedIn, what were maybe a couple of interesting user insights that you understood? And then how did you, I think LinkedIn move away from a professional network to maybe now an engagement kind of a charter as well, where there is a feed which has become very, very important. So how did you navigate all of those decisions? So if you could share with all of us, I think that would be great.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting insights for me always has been that we have always thought through that hey, speed doesn't matter for people who have high speed access.
Okay,
While building LinkedIn Lite, one of the humbling insights was that hey, speed matters for everyone. Uh,
understood.
Even if you're able to load something from 2 seconds to 1 second, it is actually helpful for users. So and oftentimes the uh, speed or performance is thought as a second class citizen when we are building products. I would say having built a product that was just speed and nothing else or just performance, I would always say that hey, it matters and it matters a lot more than what we can potentially think of. So while we are building things, we should always have a core pillar on how the product, how performant the product is, how fast the product is responding to users' needs. It's very, very important because even though the data access has been sort of democratized with the launch of Geo and all, what at least we see is that the 90th percentile speeds are still very low
Yeah,
because of pure congestion. Like if you are traveling on ORR or the kind of jams that we are seeing,
yeah,
your internet is not going to give you 1 Mbps kind of speeds. It will be few
yeah,
hundred Gbps speeds. And that's where optimizing things of what we are building will be super critical for building for India specifically and even for the world. That has been one of the learnings. The second learning I would say has been is that hey, often when you would actually look into things at a superficial level, they may seem different, but when you go in detail, uh, you will have to sort of realize what is the core problem that you are trying to solve, what is the core challenge that you are trying to solve. For example, we were working on the premium sort of scale up for India, or I'll actually give this I'll give a simpler example. LinkedIn had launched in India, and we were looking at hey, how do we optimize the product for India? So during the onboarding process, LinkedIn used to ask your school.
understood. Yeah,
And school in the States is basically your college, your degree college, while in India, a school is a school. And what we realized was a lot of people were entering their schools, like
cool.
literally uh, 10th or 12th standard schools. And LinkedIn was using this to sort of optimize the friend recommendations and things
Done.
like that. And what we started looking at was hey, a lot of new schools were getting added, and we were not able to recommend things because people were just looking at their plus 12th plus 2 schools. That's where we said, hey, let's change it to college. That
Understood.
just one word change actually changed the entire onboarding process for us. People started putting their colleges, they started getting their friends recommended, and the network started growing stronger. Similarly, what the problem that LinkedIn sort of recognized was, hey, people were just active when they were finding when they were looking for jobs. And LinkedIn
Understood.
is a two-sided marketplace. We also have recruiters who are active on a LinkedIn recruiter as well as on LinkedIn platform itself. So if the job seekers are not active, or even if the passive job seekers are not active, they are not going to be sort of uh, active for recruiter messages also. And hence, there was a conscious pivot that was taken that hey, we will actually optimize for user engagement because the entire thing was that we are not a job seeking portal. We are actually a portal where you can be more productive
Understood.
uh, through your connections. And how do you be more productive through your connection is by interacting with your connections. And that's where the whole focus on engagement sort of was brought up.
Understood. I think that's a very, very interesting way to look at it, where I think LinkedIn had to make sure that you are responding to recruiter messages, because then only anything constructive as a key value will come out of the platform. And for that, bringing the users back every day, I think that would become very, very important, and then making them active. And I can see now, and I can understand, and I think the community will always, that how the pivot makes a lot of sense, because as of today, I think we don't want to miss out on that latest leader sharing a lot of insights from OpenAI. There is so much happening in AI, and then I think there are people who are summarizing that and sharing on LinkedIn for their entire community. I think that shift has not only, I think, become from a professional networking tool, but also making sure that about your profession, what are the latest updates and how can you quickly catch up. On that lens, any particular insights from India while you were, let's say, as LinkedIn, you were building out the feed for people to engage on? Was there any difference that you felt was there in how the design decisions were taken for the feed compared with how maybe the global population was responding to it? Or do you feel that it was largely the same?
So I think another interesting learning from the entire experience had been, apart from say these nuance changes like schools to colleges to uh, s- a lot of verbiage changes that sort of helped us a
Mhm.
lot making the product stronger in India. However, it was soon that we started realizing that the Indian market, specifically the LinkedIn market, uh, behaves very similarly to the US counterparts.
Awesome.
The, and this is like the top 5% of the India that we always talk about. And their behavior was very similar. So, whatever changes we were doing for Indians, they were also applicable for global markets. And they were showing success in the global markets as well. And that's where we took a call, like the organization took a call that, hey, we'll build for global products out of India rather than just building India specific products, because the opportunity is minimal at this particular stage from a consumer product standpoint.
No, makes sense. And across your journey, sort of, let's say, from Google to then to Practo, mix of LinkedIn and then JioHotstar now, what do you think has been the importance of product design and, let's say, designers in terms of working with the product managers and making the product successful? How do you think those design decisions have been made? How has that evolved? And um, any learnings that you would want to share in terms of uh, what actually, let's say, have been some critical design choices that you have made which have gone against, let's say, what was the traditional know-how that have made your product or feature very, very successful?
Got it. So basically, a couple of things. I would say design has been always been a great partner. It's a thought design function as a function. My fellow designers, partners have been great thought leaders and thought partners overall.
Awesome.
And that is where what at least what I have seen is that to me, product building is a process, and the key partners are design, engineering, and analytics at the bare minimum. And I have learned a lot throughout the process. A few examples, like I was giving you this LinkedIn grid example versus the list example, which was very counterintuitive when we did it, but in the hindsight, it made sense. Um, Other example, I would say, as I joined Hotstar, my design partner said, "Hey, one thing that I have learned here in the last 3 4 years is that images speak a lot louder than words." And that has been sort of a tenet of whatever we do at Hotstar, uh, in terms of, hey, that the images or the visual representation will speak a lot louder than words, and that has been a pretty interesting learning overall. Similarly, we were designing search zero page for Hotstar. If you go and see today also, when you press the search tab, there's a page and then there's a grid that comes in. So earlier we used to just have history and a flat trending list, and always the flat trending list was not that visual. So we sort of took that tenet. Hey, we need to make it visual. People don't care in trending lists. Hey, what is one versus what is 10? However, we are not doing justice to the kind of posters shown and the volume of posters shown. And we sort of created a mosaic grid, which was just posters of the trending content and nothing else. Some will be small, some will be big, to break the monotony. And that's what, and it actually improved the engagement a lot. there. Like we had like a huge improvement in terms of users sort of starting to watch from there, just because we made it easier to browse and the images were far more attractive to the users.
Yes.
And it helped, we actually moved our metrics significantly just by this one small change and following this one common tenet that, hey, uh, visuals will speak louder than words. So those are a couple of examples that I remember right now, which has helped us to take the right design decisions as well as take the right product decisions in terms of how do we serve our users.
Understood. Understood. And do you think that, say, that is one learning that our community can take? That basically, maybe when you are designing for India, I think being more visual than, let's say, verbose will actually be, let's say, very, very useful for building.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the tenet is true for India as a whole that you need to be more visual. However, the other learning, which is slightly learning, is, hey, visual with where which is common, the visual cues which are common, that they work better than
Understood.
visual cues that are not common. Say if you're using just iconography and your icon is not common, people don't understand it and then they don't click on it.
Yeah.
However, if icons are common, people will just know it and click them. So it is a balance where when you are going onto visual journey, it need not be very new where people don't even know what it means. That time you'll have to sort of augment that visual transition with the text. But overall, yes, the learning is better the visuals or visually more is better than textually more.
Understood. No, no, that is very, very helpful. And I think that is one takeaway I will at least take from the last 5 minutes. I think we have roughly touched upon a lot of parts of your journey, Saurabh, and maybe we'll come back to it for, let's say, your one final takeaway. But before that, wanted to move to the next theme where I think a lot of us who have been involved in maybe as a product manager, as a founder, or as a product designer face a lot of complexity when we are building products, right? At different stages, at 0 to 1 these are different, 1 to 10 these are different. So we wanted to, let's say, um discuss and learn from you on some of those decisions which we face, and also from an overall level, if you have any guidance, we'll touch upon that as well. So starting with the second segment, I think the first thing that comes to my mind is that while you are building products at scale, and at different stages as well, there are always times when, as a product manager, I think the gut feeling suggests that this is maybe one thing that we should do, but the data, or maybe the stakeholders, or maybe the users are asking for something else. So, any examples from your let's say decade plus career on in product, that if you made such a call, and how did this pan out? Did that actually work, or did that not work, and what were your learnings from it?
I think there have been examples on both the sides.
Understood.
Uh, and it has sort of helped us learn better and better. For example, I was talking about this free user experience, sort of being countering to subscriptions and everything. So when we started proposing this experience, my business partners were like, "Hey, reduce subscriptions massively. We should track everything. We are not aligned onto this." Finally, through conversations with them, while my thing was, "Hey, as users, they'll subscribe better."
Yeah.
uh, Through conversations, we were able to convince them to run a small experiment. And with the experiment results, we were able to scale it. And it was a success. While there have been bunch of failures also with small, scrappy experiments. We did this. We had a huge sort of hypothesis that, hey, reducing premium subscription price in India is actually going to lead to more revenue. We did a very scrappy test for the churned users, and we saw wins there. Then we went all out to actually build that entire experience. Uh, and we figured out, no, it sort of improved the trials, but the net revenue remained flat even though you reduced prices by say 50%. So that
Oh,
was again an interesting experience. Ki, hey, when it comes to payments, you are not able to sort of get people to pay upfront in India, and the recurring payments don't work, and that's why some of this is not working. So it obviously improved the trials because the net outflow was not super high for these users, but overall the net increase didn't happen, which was again interesting learning overall. It went with our it was counter to our hypothesis.
Understood.
Similarly, we were trying to do say that hey, everything will be personalized during the top uh, high concurrency matches. Also, things will be personalized on Hotstar homepage. But then when we started looking at one, it was technically very expensive to do it because we get a lot of traffic during the first hour of the first minute, 2 minute, 5 minutes of the match, and a lot of traffic when innings ends. It was expensive, and we got a push from the engineering stakeholders. Hey, why do you need it? What is the upside of it? When we actually went deeper into this, we also figured out that hey, not everyone will sort of get benefited from it. We cohortize users who are coming for sports versus who are not coming for sports, and
Understood.
then started becoming intelligent key for whom we will actually personalize versus for whom we will not personalize. So expanding the boundaries, but also doing the right trade-off calls while discussing with stakeholders helped us to ship the right experience at the right costs.
Understood. Understood. I think bunch of learnings there. One is that taking cost into consideration. Obviously, over personalization might not be the solution always. There are certain set of users who need it, and versus some some are actually totally okay, and who might be, for example, during cricket. I understand. I think.
So
Uh,
what I
s-
realized,
yeah.
what we realized was that a vast majority of the users during cricket will just come, click on the cricket tile, and go away.
Okay.
Uh, and so we were like, hey, why are we personalizing? Like nobody's even looking at our personalized suggestions. They are just going to watch cricket. So instead, let's save sort of dollars for the company and personalize for users who are looking for entertainment. So we did a bunch of smart work there where we started personalizing if someone was scrolling and things like those. And hence sort of were able to build the right experience.
I think that is fun. Very, very fascinating on how do we, let's say, cohortize users, understand what they're looking for, and then invest in building the right kind of products for them and product experience as well. I think while obviously we'll move ahead, but one of the appreciations that the Indian ecosystem, product ecosystem, always has had for JioHotstar is the scale and the concurrency that we have been able to serve and set global benchmarks for. So first of all, congratulations on that. Maybe we did not touch upon that multiple times, but I think you and the team has been doing fantastic work. And I think I will also come back, and we would want to learn that when you are operating at that concurrency, how do you, let's say, make the decisions of serving different users and understanding about the behaviors that they would want the product to help them with? So I'll elaborate what I mean. When you are serving that large audience at the same time, uh, you mentioned quickly understanding and then maybe personalizing for someone, some maybe not personalizing for someone. Second is also the behaviors, right? India obviously has large number of people in terms of tier 1 or type 1, and then multiple hundreds of let's say millions in terms of the type 2. So when you are personalizing or building a feature, how do you cohortize these things when you have to serve at scale, right? Because the time to understand that what might be, if it is a new user particularly, what might be the bucket in which they will fit, and then how do you sort of still ensure that they retain on the product? So I think that is something that has always fascinated me, so wanted uh, that if you could touch upon that, because that would be great learning for all of us and the community too.
Yeah, I think first of all kudos to the team. I have just been a catalyst, as I always say. It's all the hard work of the team that we have been able to sort of run the platform at such a high scale, do the wonders that we have been doing. Uh, in terms of how do we do it, I think there are two parts, and I would say the key principle that we follow is keep it simple.
Nice.
Don't overcomplicate things a lot. And when we look at it, it was very simple for us. We knew that certain users are going to come only for entertainment, and they have been coming for entertainment. They have not been watching sports,
Understood.
uh, anything whenever the sports have been live on the platform. For them, it made dead right sense to actually personalize the entire experience at a user level. And then there were users who will come during sports, whether these are new users, whether these are users who are dormant on the platform and during the sports time they are coming. They just mainly watch sports.
Understood.
Either we have their history or not history. The simple sort of theorem there was that, hey, if someone is coming during a match time and they have not come onto our platform, most likely they're going to come for the match.
Okay.
So no need to personalize for them. We can actually start showcasing them the match. Yes, we will do some sort of language personalization and things like those based on the area you are coming from and things like those. However, we kept it super simple in terms of what we knew about the users, and wherever we didn't know much about the users, we didn't go into the fancy rocket science of real time personalization and things like those. We said, hey, they're coming for the match. We'll figure out. We might be wrong at certain places, but we had our safeguards that, hey, they start to scroll the homepage, personalization will start kicking in because we know that majority of our users just go into the match. They are not scrolling on the homepage. They're not doing anything. They just want to click the match and go start watching the match. That
Yes.
helped sort of segregate these users and their behaviors automatically. And to me, the learning has been sometimes the simplest solutions work much better than the complicated sort of solutions. And keeping it simple often helps in how we are able to shape the product also.
Understood. No, that is very, very important. I think it brings me to something else as well. So whenever you are thinking about, for example, I think where we all, let's say, watch the match that is going on, uh, how do you define that? What are the kind of different experiences that would be relevant, let's say, for a tier one kind of a user base, or a user base that is habitual with English? And then what are the kind of differences that would be happening for in terms of a tier two kind of a Bharat user? And how do you make sure that engagement for both of them while watching the same sports content, right, continuously increase? Do you think that there is outside the limited scope the behavior is largely constant, or that also sort of is very, very different, and how do you optimize for it?
So I think my learning for sports watching behavior is that the behavior is fairly constant. And
Okay.
thanks to a production team that they actually try to engage the users via different commentary streams. So to me, the difference in the engagement comes from the language commentary streams
Understood. Yeah.
for these users, where the commentary might be a lot more funny in a Haryanvi or a Bhojpuri, while it might be a lot more stats driven on a Hangouts feed or experts feed, and while English commentary would be the old classic commentary. So I think that's where the engagement difference, and we see that people self-selecting into some of these commentary streams themselves when they want it, uh,
Understood.
and that has been again an interesting learning.
Understood. No, personally, I'm a fan. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a fan of the Bhojpuri commentary. I think sometimes just intentionally I've been sort of switching the sort of tabs and listening to it because it adds a rare fun element in terms of if you have not been speaking that language, I think it still gives you that flavor of the sort of match and the intensity in which that is happening. I think on a
yeah.
personal note, do you miss getting involved in the intensity of the matches, because you as the product and tech team have to make sure that everything is up and running? uh, I think that's a maybe a fun question, but do you miss
Uh,
getting
we are watching the match, so I think we do have fun while we are keeping the platform up.
uh,
The atmosphere in office is pretty amazing. In fact, like most of the matches, the high concurrency matches, we all are in office. We all are together.
uh,
Uh, we all are sort of tuning in. CT win, T20 World Cup win. You would see that there are multiple TVs streaming the match. One TV is 10 seconds faster, and everyone during the last few minutes of the match will be sticking onto that TV.
understood.
I think we do have our fun while we are sort of shipping these experiences at scale.
No, no, I think I totally understand that. And I think as a product manager, I know the kind of satisfaction India win plus the sort of the chance of getting it streamed to millions of people at the same time would be giving. So I totally relate to that. And thank you for sharing that experience. I think when we're thinking about building products at scale, sort of, I think something that always comes up is that how do you juggle the priorities, right? Because there are so many different kinds of users, there are so many different things that you can actually do. So when do you, let's say, when do you sit to build that roadmap, what is your take? How do you prioritize things? How do you sort of make those decisions of what we will approach, what we would not? And then how do you make this decision that whether, let's say, what would be the split of data driven decisions, maybe gut driven decisions, and maybe something else that is getting us future ready, right? Because AI is also coming in. So, what are the components from, let's say, making the business or the product AI ready? So just wanted to understand, because a lot of people in our community is also, let's say, senior folks out there. So you as a product leader of such a large platform, how do you build those roadmaps, whether it is quarterly, monthly, or annual? And then how do you get that balance of gut driven, data driven, and then sort of making the product future ready, which maybe nobody is asking for?
Yes, so I think a couple of things. Basically, my guidance to the teams always have been, and this is what we strive to achieve, is that hey, the roadmap should be divided into three key sections. One is the core, which is
Understood.
the BAU stuff, optimizing for stuff which is more data driven, more insights driven, and the way we prioritize is the impact. So every time, whatever we do, it's very simple. Prioritize on the impact, which cohort to focus on, why to focus on. Everything ultimately boils down to onto the impact of the key KPIs the team is sort of focusing on. Uh, and the impact can be material metrics, or the impact could be immaterial metrics. Basically, my guidance, and this is what we strive to achieve for our teams, is that the whole roadmap is divided into three key sections. One is the core,
Okay.
and we always optimize the roadmap on impact.
Okay.
Everything is either a user facing metric impact or a user impact. The core is our BAU stuff, where we are actually looking at, hey, what are the metric to optimize for? What is the user problem to solve? And we are prioritizing it. These are our day in, day out. Then this is around 60-70% of our roadmap. Another 20 odd percent of our roadmap is on strategic bets. These are sort of medium term bets which we know that has a very clear win. We know that we would have tested out things in the past, and it is a clear win, and it's a strategic direction that we are taking. Say for example, MaxView, which we discussed.
Oh,
And the third is moonshots,
understood.
where it's around 10-15% of our bandwidth every quarter, every year, where we are trying out crazy things. These are mostly gut based calls, but
Understood.
the overall product development, the product sort of launch and development processes, that for these gut based calls, will be very, very scrappy. Will may not sort of ship up the most optimal experience, but will ship up a scrappy experience to see if there is a sign of life in our hypothesis.
Understood.
We'll collect that learning, and then these will either move to BAU or to the strategic bets as a section. So
Understood.
this is how we tend to sort of optimize for our roadmaps, in order to deliver. And I think one of the two key rules I follow: focus on the impact and prioritize ruthlessly in terms of what we are doing overall, which leads to like people innovating in the 10-15% and the 20% sort of buckets,
Okay.
and we being able to meet our targets and doing, we are not like sort of just innovating and losing the track of what's happening today in the business through the remaining core buckets.
Understood. And what is the frequency at which, let's say, uh, a product at the scale of JioHotstar would sort of get to build that roadmap? Because things change very, very quickly in the market. So, how do you define that? Let's say, this is the charter and this is what we are going to stick to?
So basically we have a year long view,
Okay.
but we revisit that year long view at least quarterly, if not twice a quarter.
Understood. Understood. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so
Uh,
like next 1 or 2 quarters is very clear. We revisit it, while say 2 quarters, beyond 2 quarters, it's slightly hazy. That is how we look at it, because yeah, there's no point of sort of committing to things much ahead in it
yeah.
time.
So, on this, and I think given the theme is complexity at scale, I think when you're defining the roadmap, obviously, for example, MaxView, right? I think that is something that personally, because um, generally I'm commuting for work or in Bangalore, it takes a lot of time if you have been here. Uh, and MaxView generally comes in very, very handy, even if you're walking on the street or doing something else, right? So I think that feature has really intrigued me. And we got a lot of questions that when you would have been, let's say, making it as a part of roadmap, how did you define when that feature would was ready? And that is just an example, but there are a lot of complex feature which you also mentioned, the 360-degree view and then maybe findings. So when you're building at that scale, how do you define whether the feature is ready now to get let's say live with the users? Because it will always be a let's say tussle, right? That maybe we can do these things better, maybe this is the component which is not working well. So how do you define what is ready at that scale? And then because there is always this pressure to ship within a particular roadmap that we have already committed, but then you also want to experiment and get very very quick user feedback, right? Because always have felt that urge as a PM that maybe release karte hain and then we'll figure out. So how does things work at that scale?
Even at that scale, we are iterative. To be very frank, the first version of MaxView was launched in 6 weeks from conception to launch.
Okay, awesome.
Uh,
Yeah.
and basically, the way we look at it, we define a very crisp MVP, and it matters. Like the definition of MVP itself is an art, according to me.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
it cannot be very complex so that we are building it for 6 months. It cannot be very, very simple enough so that the product fails. So this was part of the 10-15% bucket that I was talking about.
Sure.
However, what we call it as a MVP, where some of the people in the organization call it as a MLP, minimum lovable product or minimum marketable product. I still feel that, hey, it should be usable. It should be able to help us test the core hypothesis. And then we can keep on building on it. And it should be usable by users. It should not be just a very functional thing. So when we launched MaxView for the first time, it didn't have remembrance. So for example, if you switched into MaxView, if you went out and come back again, we won't start again in MaxView, which was a huge problem. But we're like, hey, first thing that we want to learn is, hey, how many people will adopt it? And we are focused on adoption a lot more rather than persevering that adoption itself. And we
Understood.
over optimize the experience for adoption. For adoption, we were like literally at 70% of what we have done even till now,
Hmm.
maximum, in our first launch. And then we started building these bells and whistles around, hey, we will need for the remembrance that people who have switched to MaxView, they'll just keep on playing in MaxView unless they switch out and things like those. So it is a fine balance. And yeah, I think I don't want to say it depends, but yes, it depends. There are two factors I would say. The larger the organization is, the more is at stake in terms of reputation when you are shipping out a feature, versus the smaller the organization is. So you will still build more, you will still polish the feature more before you go it out. But what has helped me overall is to crisply define what is the core hypothesis that we want to test, and then tailor the experience and optimize the experience for that hypothesis. And some of the other things can take a backseat when you are experimenting a very net new feature.
No, no, I think that is very, very helpful as a sort of guiding principle. But maybe taking a step back, sort of, because I think this is something personally I have always been excited to learn about. That what was the core hypothesis where, let's say, someone maybe, and you can share the behind the scenes of who proposed that idea or how did it come across, what was the behind the let's say curtain story for those 6 weeks, and what exactly do you think right now is the let's say incremental impact that MaxView is creating for JioHotstar on an overall level? Also, I think something that I felt was about which was interesting is that what I have seen is that when I switch to the default view, I think I keep getting that advertisements or in ad about the feature itself rather than something else to make me remind about that, hey, this is something that is available as a feature. So how do you make all of those decisions? Because I think there's a lot to learn about that, and happy to also, if you feel sort of comfortable sharing some of the stats on how that came up, what was the impact, and then eventually how it's progressing.
Yeah, so I would say the core hypothesis was again very simple. With the evolution of short form, the world
Understood. Yeah.
has moved to uh,
Vertically.
vertical viewing, and it's very natural to hold your phone like this, right? Uh, while to watch cricket, you always had to hold your phone like this. We were talking to our users, and we were also observing them, like while commuting, while doing these things. Multitasking was not easier with the phone being horizontals and things like those. That's why we said, hey, and there was no data supporting it. The only data was, yes, the vertical video consumption has increased. We're like, "Okay, let's take a bet. What if we actually move the live cricket to MaxView?"
Understood.
It was a big bet, but it paid out really well for us. We have seen a decent click and engagement. I can't share the numbers,
Oh, no,
but
I understand. Yeah.
that's why it exists today. Also, we have been able to optimize it in terms of production costs, in terms of the experience. We just started with cricket viewing experience, but now as we look at this form factor more and more, it has been able to help us unlock new experiences like during the recent IPL, we unlocked two new experience in MaxView, where if you
Honestly.
swipe up, you can start watching key moments right from there. If you swipe right, you can change camera angles.
Oh, awesome.
Uh, and we when we actually saw this, when we built this and shipped this out, we saw key movements adoption improve by multiple times. We saw multicam adoption improve by multiple times. So it's just making it easier and more intuitive for users to sort of experience the live game. And we launched MaxView on highlights also,
Yeah.
because it just becomes more intuitive for the users to watch it in that form factor. So yeah, it was a pure hunch call. We didn't have a lot of data. We are like, hey, let's go ahead and launch it. We'll figure it out. um, it has created immense impact, and hence we have invested more and more in it. uh, Again, as I told you, we optimized on the discovery of the tool. Still, the problem that we face is a lot of people don't know about MaxView, because whenever we have gone and like asked people, hey, why are you not watching this, they were like, oh, I can watch like this, it's pretty amazing. So that has been the case, and that's where you will see those ads talking about MaxView. You will see we want to obviously improve the adoption. It's a very industry pivotal moment for us, when nobody would have thought a cricket field can be seen in a vertical
Yeah.
experience. Now people actually love sort of watching in that experience. So it has been a humbling journey and learning so far.
I think personally, I'm a fan of the Max U, and I think we got a lot of questions from the community that they requested we should ask you sort of about it. I think one of the things that also intrigues me is that generally when I look at, as you mentioned, right, the default behavior of watching cricket, I think when this screen happens, I think it gives a lot more context of what is happening in the cricket field in the single view, right? And what I've also noticed, maybe this IPL, or I'm not sure if it was there in the last as well, that maybe you have added two contextual half screen
Yes.
videos to, maybe one is focusing maybe on MS Dhoni and then rest is showing me some part of the ground as well to maybe give that context awareness about how the field is shaping up. Because I think we have been watching cricket on television, and that has been the default behavior for maybe millennials like all of us. And that is now migrating to first Hotstar on TV, sorry, on phone, and now in a max view kind of setting. So, how did that insight come up that maybe we split and add two cameras? And I'm assuming a lot of tech goes into it, but we would love to understand from you all the behind the scenes for
That
that.
has been a learning process. Frankly, when we first launched it, it was just the vertical screen. But then we realized, hey, during replays, what TV was doing was it was showing the replay in one, but it was also showing what's happening on the ground. Batsman waiting for the replay. If it is a DRS call, batsman waiting for the replay while umpire is showcasing the replay and things like those. And that's where this entire innovation came in. Hey, what if we do a split screen equivalent in vertical also? And once we started doing this, we're like, hey, we could potentially do a bunch of stuff. This was sort of, if you remember, during early 2000s or late 90s, there used to be an inset view when a batsman will hit the ball towards the boundary and they're running. The inset view will cover the pitch, and the rest of the camera will focus on the ball. So that's where it came from. Hey, what if we do this where we are focused obviously on the pitch, but also where the ball is going via a split view, equivalent of an inset view? And that's how things evolved. And thanks to the production team, they had a bunch of innovative ideas, and we landed here.
No, no, congratulations to you and the team, Saurabh. I think you're completely defining how we will be watching cricket in the future, and obviously a lot of sports. And I think one interesting insight that you mentioned is that the Max U, because users are now habituated to that swipe experience and watching those, let's say, vertical form videos, short form videos. I think that is also increasing the exposure of the other features and, let's say, the key moments. Which is exciting to learn that if you build on top of what users are getting accustomed to, I think you can always increase the exposure to the other features and other avenues as well.
Yeah,
So,
often you shape the behavior, and often you follow the behavior also.
what- I think that's a very very interesting I think feature as well, because now once you have set up the new behavior and you are now following, I think this can become really really big is what I understand.
Yeah.
Um and do you see that because the scale at which Geo Hotstar is operating, do you see the pressure from the users now that, hey, you have made cricket appear at this, why not all the other pieces as well? Because a large population of India maybe consumes content on the phone when they are on the go. So how has that pressure been? What have been the feedbacks, and how are you juggling priorities there?
Uh, what I can say is we are sort of actively exploring some of this,
Awesome.
where we have brought live cricket onto a vertical viewing experience or MaxView. We are thinking, hey, what does MaxView mean for entertainment?
Yes.
And we might experiment in future, but right now we are actively exploring on this.
No, no, I think that is very, very helpful. And whenever, I think one thing that we have seen is that coming to maybe moving to third part of what we wanted to discuss is obviously a lot of products that you have built has, let's say, interface with the tier two India. I think one of the interesting behaviors that we are seeing in tier two India is, let's say, that sense of paying that 1 rupee for one vertical episode on maybe the story kind of segments. A lot of apps are coming across which are using micro monetization to give content, right? And adding that cliffhanger, some of the audio stories, some of the visual stories as well. So, from that perspective, sort of, what has been your learnings about um, where does, let's say, where does the NHP audience or the Bharat users draw the lines of to pay or not to pay, and then how much to pay? And what has been your critical product and design decisions you might have made across, let's say, years to make sure that the revenue obviously hits through the roof?
Yes, I think my core hypothesis is that the users will either pay from their time or from their wallets, and we are sort of experimenting with some of the business model changes, as well as some of the experience changes in terms of, hey, how will we make users pay
Mhm.
uh, with when they are paying with their time, which means that they are sort of watching advertisements. And I feel that is something which we are trying to optimize for. Hey, there'll be people who will be convenience oriented and will pay us from subscriptions, while there'll be people who will not want to pay us, uh, and who will actually okay be paying us with their time. The second thing which you also mentioned is also pretty interesting, which we are actively exploring at this stage. In terms of what we also know and learn from the industry, is that these microtransactions, people actually paying a lot more than the macro transactions. This is what we call as sachet pricing in FMCG, and this is something which we are actively exploring in terms of, hey, what is the user segment we target? How do we target them? Does it make sense for our business model or not? Uh, I would say this is under active exploration at this stage.
Understood. Any past experience, Saurabh, that you would want to share with us on this podcast of a similar decision that you had to make? What was the entire process? What were your learnings from it, and eventually how did it work out? When I say similar, is because this is again a pivotal moment, right? Monetization versus macro. So any similar experience in the past, and any learnings for all of us?
Not with the microtransactions as per se, but what my learnings has been that uh, I think the core learnings, the core philosophies, people will engage and then pay.
Understood.
How much to pay, what to pay could be very, very different.
Mhm.
However, the core learning is this, that it's engagement first and then payments. And this is what you mentioned, that some of the apps, whether these are audio apps or video apps, are sort of trying to monetize. I feel that's going to be true in Indian market.
Understood.
And we will sort of look to enable microtransactions in terms of whenever someone is building their products uh, for the Bharat kind of users, while for the top 5% of the users, your macro transactions will work beautifully. So it's a balance that, based on your target user segment and based on your uh, current focus, will have to balance things out.
I think that is very, very helpful. One of the key things that we also realize for the NHP audience or the Bharat users, sort of, is that, and I might be wrong there, is that they have maybe they get very, very habituated to a particular product flow, or let's say a particular CTA or a particular design. And if you make those minor tweaks as that, maybe the entire sort of ship falls through the crack for them, and they completely abandon or uninstall, right? I think so. Just wanted to understand from you through your experience at LinkedIn or maybe any and JioHotstar or any other organization where you have seen that you made a change which led users to completely abandon the ship, and then we had to quickly recall what was that experience and what were your learnings about it, and how do you mitigate that now whenever you are doing that?
So I feel one of the key learnings has been before we ship out, and that's where like at least I have not seen that at that sort of massive scale.
Okay.
Uh, Basically, we actually do a lot of user testing before we ship things out.
Oh,
In fact, if you would see in 2023, Hotstar
yeah,
redesigned their entire app experience.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh, and we migrated sort of 500 million odd users into the new app experience. We
Understood.
did it again this year when we sort of merged when we sort of migrated from Hotstar to JioHotstar. However, we test the new experiences that we are building very thoroughly, whether it's navigation paradigms, whether it's uh, iconography and things like those. And that has helped us to arrest some of these things well in advance,
Understood.
uh, even before going to a mass market. One of the interesting learning has been like we thought, hey, uh, things like a easy access to languages or channels might not be useful. It would be on our homepage. People can scroll. Obviously, it was not a deterministic destination. It was some seventh or eighth tray or whatever plus 10 plus trays. When we launched the new Hotstar app back in 23 and we were doing our beta testing at that point in time, people started asking, hey, I want to just go to Hindi content. How do I go to? I don't have a way to go to. And that helped us learn ki, hey, it's not, and it was right accessible there on the homepage.
Yeah.
But when we dug deeper and asked users, no, in the previous version of Hotstar, there was a deterministic set path. Hey, you click on the hamburger menu, you
And
will
then
see
you get
languages, you will see Hindi, and boom, you are there. People were looking for that deterministic path, and hence we had to sort of morph our designs in order to provide that deterministic path to users who just want to go Hindi because they have sort of made it as a ritual that hey, I want to watch an upma, I'll do these three steps, I'll find an upma and I'll start watching.
understood.
And that has been an interesting experience where we had to do a bunch of these changes to actually meet the user where they were rather than just changing the behavior.
No, no, I think that is very insightful. I think since you mentioned Anupma, I think that is one of the favorite shows for my mother. And I think just few months back, I was teaching her how to navigate the app and the TV, obviously, to figure this out. But I felt that maybe she was not very conveniently able to do that, right? So just wanted to understand from you, because from a Geo Hotstar and then other products that you have built, I think the age groups also would be one of the important persona elements. So anything that you have understood about the combination of people who have, let's say, who were not born into the digital native world and who are getting accustomed to all of your critical products across different interfaces, right? How are you, let's say, if there are any tweaks that you have to make, and how do you research about them, and how does that influence your roadmap or the decisions that you make?
Yeah, so we do like speak to our users very frequently, almost on a weekly, fortnightly basis in
Awesome.
terms of the challenges they are facing. We also do very fundamental user researches on how the users are behaving. It's more of observation rather than just collecting insights, and
Understood.
that shapes up a lot of our sort of product roadmaps. In
Understood.
fact, like connected TVs are a big focus and investment area for us in order to how do we simplify the experience. What at least if you would have seen the shipping data of the connected TVs, they are exploding in India and they will explode more. And we'll have a lot of, I would say, users experiencing digital for the first time on connected TVs, and how do we simplify that? And the experience right now is clunky. The entire interface is clunky in terms of the remotes and everything. So how do we simplify that experience is something which we are exploring to change the entire behavior.
Understood. Understood. No, no, I think that is very helpful. So before we move on to the last segment of the podcast, sort of any final insight of any key learning that you have about the NHP segment that you would want to share with the community, which we can be very useful for all of us. I think what I remember is more visual than what was. and then obviously speaking to users, which you just mentioned, on a regular level, and then testing before you release. But anything else that you believe has been a key insight that you have garnered across your years building at scale for these users?
Yeah, I think the other insight that I have is that localization is important for these users in order, and it should be app localization. And a nuanced insight on this is that many a times when we are developing, we look at localizing it using the device language. However, my learning has been people still want to use their devices as English language because it's simpler for someone to explain it to them and for them also. However, inside app, they would love to change the languages to their local language and hence navigate the app sort of better, because device itself is a sort of a status symbol. Hey, it's in English or something.
Yeah.
While inside the app, people want to change the languages. So that has been a pretty interesting insight where we are also working on improving the app language adoption to engage these HNB users a lot more.
Understood. No, no, that is a fantastic insight. I think one thing that I realized in while working for the NHP audience is that whenever you would ask them that, hey, the device language is English, but how much do you understand? I think they used to sort of get offended that why are we questioning whether they understand English or not? Because ideally they want to keep the device language as English, but as you rightly mentioned, I think they're comfortable in, um, I think, going ahead and tweaking the sort of app language. And I think I faced a lot of challenge sort of in a couple of products that we were building at scale, where we had to decide between the device language versus the app language versus a within feature kind of a language. If let's say the video is in a particular language, right? Or sorry, the audio for a particular video, I think those were three distinct settings altogether.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think the learning that we have also is that the language that I can understand, that doesn't mean that the it's the same language that I can read. So audio language preference is much different, and the learning also has been that the audio language preference also differs from a content original language perspective. Say for example, what we have seen is Tamil users are okay watching the content in Tamil in sort of Telugu as the original language rather than watching it as dubbed in Tamil, while a
Understood.
Hindi content, they would want to watch it in dubbed in Tamil. And even if someone is watching in Tamil, that doesn't mean that they can read and write Tamil. They can understand Tamil. They may not be able to read write Tamil. So those have been the interesting learnings where we had done this experiment where we were changing certain sections of the app based on the user's audio language preferences, and boom, it just uh, sort of back. We had to backtrack because
Yeah.
the learning was I can understand Tamil but not read Tamil.
I think that also brings me that there's also this innate behavior, and that maybe is in a lot of tier one people as well. For example, a lot of K dramas or the Spanish dramas that are there on, let's say, platforms. I think we really enjoy them when they're in their native language, but we depend on the subtitles as well then to keep understanding what is happening. So what I've realized is that one is the device language, second is the app language, third is the audio language, and fourth is the subtitle
Subtitle.
language as well.
Yeah.
And for anyone who might be new to building for the NHP audience, it can get very, very confusing. But I think any final playbook that you would suggest to sort of navigate all of this. And just before that, I think one thing that I've also realized is that the devices that people use also come with a lot of complexity, right? Some of the devices might be able to stream, let's say, content much easier just because of the RAM that is available at them. A lot of those factors as well. So on a mix of these, if there are, let's say, a playbook that you would want to suggest to the community, I know it's very different and depends on the experiments, but any guidance basis your experience.
No, so I would say always distinguish between read and write language to be different, preference to be different from audio language preferences. That is one thumb rule. The other thumb rule is in India specifically. So you will find it very different in European markets, where almost every device is on the same language uh, of their native language. So in India, the device language does not reflect users' language preferences at all.
Understood.
Uh, that is the second thumb rule, which I would say, which people should think about while they are building these experiences. Uh, yeah, I think those are the major things while you are looking at, and even in terms of, as I told earlier, also always sort of when you're focused on HNBs, try to optimize for performance because these devices will be laggy, these devices will be 2 generations old, and things like those. So you will have to think of performance as your first tenet when you're building products for these users.
Understood. Understood. I think that brings in mind. I'm not sure if you have heard about it. Obviously, you were at the pivotal point at LinkedIn Lite, but Facebook Lite. What I understood and read from one of the peers at Facebook is that when they were facing a challenge in terms of growth beyond a point outside the US and UK market, I think they had to take this traditional call of building maybe an app that can stream all those photos at, let's say, a 2G and 3G network at maybe an Android 4 kind of a setting. And I think
Yes.
they built this together, one team, and then that team in a month shipped an app which was less than 1 MB, because whenever people in the NHB audience also go ahead to figure out that what they will download, I think the size of the app also becomes a conscious call, because I think 8 to 10 years back, it used to take obviously minutes in downloading anything above a few MBs as well. And what I realize is that I think not only in India, but for South America and Brazil and a lot of African markets as well, that actually I think that was what people were waiting for, and they hit 100 million users in less than a month on that
Yeah, yeah.
app. So yeah, I think those are some very very interesting aspects, Saurabh. But before we move on to the uh, last segment, any key learning that you believe across your careers in product that you have sort of you believe that is changing as a core belief right now, given AI is coming up as a product management principle? Uh, or do you think that still, if we follow the similar playbook, I think we'll be able to do a good job by the business or the product?
So I feel that the risk taking ability is going to increase.
Awesome.
With the AI world, we'll be able to
Mhm.
iterate things faster, and we might be able to be more scrappy in order to ship the first versions out. And that will overall improve the velocity of the changes that PMs can sort of potentially bring about, or the
Understood.
not only PMs but the teams can sort of bring about. To me, that is going to change, and that is set to be disrupted in the new ecosystem. And also the way we would have thought about the interfaces, the UXs so far, are also ripe to be disrupted in the new world.
Understood. Understood. And I think that one of the questions that has been going around is in the US startups, you'll see a new role of a product engineer coming about. I think I think I enjoy sir, who is VP of product design at Zomato. We were also discussing about it recently, where we felt that product designer and then product engineer are coming as core roles, where a lot of professions are getting mixed just because AI is enabling that speed, and then you can do a lot of things quicker. So what do you think is the let's say future of product management as a profession, because now more people can build, tweak, iterate? How do you think the profession is going to grow? And given I think tools like Lovable, Replit, Bolt, right? I'm not sure if you have been using
Yeah.
them, but I think those seem quite fascinating. uh, where do you think, let's say, a product manager and engineer will draw the line in the future? Or do you think that these professions would merge? And I think that is one that comes to my mind. And second, obviously, a few people in the community requested us to ask you that do you think that, let's say, what aspects of because you can build a lot of things very quickly. Uh, do you think that the why of what you are building and how it will impact? Do you think that there are some basic changes of that tenant we'll have to do so that we invest more time? Because when you can build everything quickly, right? I think choosing what to build becomes maybe 100x more important, because you cannot keep throwing everything at your user. So, what are the frameworks, right? To summarize the question, one, how is the profession changing? And then what aspects of the initial building blocks of products would become more critical?
Yeah, I feel that couple of things. What is changing in my mind, and I would not go to the extreme of are the professions merging or not right now.
Okay.
Uh, to me, what is changing is you are becoming more efficient.
Hmm, hmm,
That will that lead to professions being merging? Maybe, may not be.
okay.
But what is definitely changing is that people will be far more efficient because they are able to do things faster. A
Understood.
product manager will be able to sort of try out few design iterations by themselves before sort of think going to the designer, or even like talking to the designers. They can potentially brainstorm much faster today.
Yeah.
And that is definitely changing. And I would always say that a product manager who uses AI might replace you faster than the AI itself.
Understood.
Uh, so that is one thing which is changing, and it is changing drastically. And in this world, it's easier to get into the trap of, hey, let's try these 20 different things out. uh, I would still say that the learning will happen only when you are trying those 20 things out with the core hypothesis. So that is not going to change. You'll still have to prioritize ruthlessly because everyone will be running fast. It's not
Yep.
only that you are able to run fast. So where do you invest in? You'll have to prioritize much more ruthlessly right now. That, hey, out
Understood.
of the 20 things, if I can do 10, earlier I was able to do one, but now if I'm able to do 10, what are those 10 things? Because that is what is going to distinguish the product, uh, and bring the differentiation to the product that you are building. So I feel that the prioritization, being able to prioritize, being able to say no to the right things will become more and more important in this new world. While it is, yes, everyone is becoming more efficient. And as a product manager, designer, engineer, we will need to sort of get into that bandwagon in order to do our work at the right amount of efficiency.
I think thank you for sharing that wisdom. One of the other things, Saurabh, that I have realized is that some of the best product designers that we work with, right? I'm not sure if you have had that similar experience. They generally believe that maybe don't come up with how this feature would look
Yeah.
like, but rather just tell me the problem. I will talk to the user. I will figure out how that happens, right? But now what I'm seeing is that with tools like Lovable, etc., I think, and obviously the ease at which Figma AI, Canva AI are sort of working, right? A lot of PMs are now also visualizing how their idea would pan out, and they are going to designers with, let's say, a first version of how exactly everything should be. So, do you think that this dynamic between a product manager and a designer in the future would change or is already changing? And second, do you think that is it for the betterment? Because the kind of critical thinking which designers were bringing onto the table, I think now I have started to see actually reducing. So any sort of suggestions and guidance on how to navigate that and how that is changing?
So I think while some of these tools can give us good starting point to have a discussion with the designer, the critical thinking will still be there in terms of, hey, what is the right solution? Otherwise, what we might end up seeing is that every product looking exactly the same,
Yep.
and products will lose their differentiation, and that's where the creativity and the critical thinking of the teams will sort of come through. And hence we'll have to think it in those terms rather than thinking that, hey, everything will be following the same run of the mill stuff.
Understood. So you believe that the interaction would remain similar? Only thing is that
The
maybe the
speed of interactions and back and forth will change. Say, for example, when I'm looking at adopting the glass UI for my iPhone app, I can potentially iterate on those things faster, but the pros and cons, all those discussions will still happen.
I think we can wrap up this particular podcast episode. And I just wanted to thank you both. And just for anyone who's listening, if these kind of conversations, help you, iterate, or in terms of like looking at a product in a different vision, being a better designer, being a better manager, anything that it helps you with, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Anything you want us to cover in our upcoming episodes, we have a community that we have. It's a WhatsApp link. We will share everything in the description below. We have our newsletters. Let's just keep this growing, as we all are in need of this, especially at this hour. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. And from Enzo Labs team, we want to just continue going forward like this only. Thank you so much.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.